Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to the next episode of Fanalysis, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I am Retty 4. With me today is Grey Jedi 91
Hey guys.
and Anton Bandale.
Be water, my friends.
Be water. Take us away, Matt.
Okay, so today we are discussing Book 1, Episode 3, which is called The Southern Air Temple. And I suppose this episode marks a slight confrontation of the past for both, well, a huge one for Aang and sort of a slight one for Zuko as well. This is the start of what we'll be seeing many times throughout the entire series, where Avatar kind of has like an A plot and a B plot, normally centered around Aang's adventures and Zuko's. And so we have Aang returning home for the first time since he's woken up out of the iceberg, and Zuko running into Commander Zhao, who's a figure from his past and an influential figure moving forward throughout the season. So with that said, Antoine will take us away for talking points.
Yeah, so the first scene we have gang heading to the air temple, and of course Sokka and Katara know a little bit more than Aang does in terms of, and also I always had a thought about why doesn't Aang like kind of consider, oh wait, it's been 100 years, like people are probably dead, so he shouldn't be as surprised as he is when he gets to it. But they're trying to kind of hide him from it as best they can, and we get the little inklings of it, like okay, we're going to the air temple, but like make sure you don't get your hopes up too much. It's a little bit different than what you probably remember it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that running away from the problem again, which he has a bit of a problem with as a character in general. He's kind of like, no, it's fine, it'll be all right. Yeah, he's not willing to accept the truth until later on.
Yeah, until he really sees it.
Yeah. We see like inklings every now and then, but until the final reveal, it's kind of like he's just focusing on any possibility that isn't addressing the actual issue. And Katara does her best to kind of get around that.
Yeah, I think he is also 12.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it. I think I do see what you're saying completely, but I do think I would imagine that the shock is less so much that there's nobody that's lived that long, and more so that there's just straight up nobody. Like they really are all just gone. He is the last Airbender.
Mm. I mean, to be fair, it's an impressive feat being able to take out a bunch of people that could just scatter and fly in every which way and direction. I can kind of see where he might have some hope that some escaped, but yeah. And again, you like I say, he's 12, so optimism is going to be kind of built in. But yeah, and I like how he's eager to get moving. He's going home, so regardless of what awaits him there, he's getting to see something that he technically hasn't seen for 100 years. Even if it's not necessary. We don't actually know how much time has passed from his perspective, do we? It's not like more.
Yeah, it's not that clear.
He thought it was a few days.
Yeah,
I remember he that was his impression when they asked him how long he thought he'd been in there, but that was clearly wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. But he just doesn't remember that large amount of time. Okay, so that leads us into the next scene, doesn't it?
Yeah, the next scene is the Zuko and Iroh meet General Zhao, and we get the very big impression of the difference between the kind of ship that we thought was very big in the first episode with Zuko, and then you're like, oh no, this is what the true Fire Nation might is when they come into the docks. But yeah, Zhao becomes a very consistent antagonist for our antagonist character, which I think is also a very good thing to have for an antagonist character, is to give them also some sort of wall that they need to get through, and that is what Zhao is, because he's also looking for the Avatar as well, because whoever finds the Avatar will gain a lot of clout with Ozai.
He's definitely out for glory, and he's already in a position of high status, so he doesn't really even need it. He's just trying to climb the ladder even more.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting introduction for him as well, because he strikes quite an imposing figure on the docks. Particularly, you see how Zuko is irritated by him, but still quite wary. And Iroh's, trying to get them to pay respects and be polite and such. So it sets him up as like an interesting stumbling block for the characters to start with. And I think it's important, like you said, that they have people that aren't the protagonist as their own kind of antagonists, because it gives them a way of having him face, it's like in this episode, having him face a problem without it being always the hero versus the villain every single episode. Cartoon, villain of the week style. It adds a little bit of variation.
Yeah, I think that this is partly like what kind of informs you, like in the back of your mind, even on a first viewing, that Zuko in particular is not going to be just your standard, you know, weekly episode bad guy who like, you know, goes down every episode and like sucks, and you're just waiting for him to fail. Like he's got his own hurdles to jump through, which makes you wonder where's his character going, even if you're not like a repeat viewer of the series, like looking at it in retrospect.
Yeah, this episode is brilliant for doing just that. Actually, setting up him as a character rather than just the villain, which is impressive considering it's only the third episode. It's a good way of making use of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Iroh as well being as funny as ever in that scene. He's like, so what? Did we crash or something?
Yeah, it makes his story a little bit more dynamic too. When he's you actually see that he has a story to be told versus just being that very one-dimensional like villain, which he isn't. The next one we have is they finally approach the air temple, which is very striking in its beauty, even though it is kind of desolate once we get closer to it. But it's a really short scene. It's really just them seeing the temple. It's our first time seeing what an air temple looks like.
And it is a beautiful piece of art as well, on approach. Like it's very different from everything we've seen before, which is something they do really well in the series in general. Like they have unique, also similar but also unique sort of environments that they'll go through. Not every single episode, but certainly between a few episodes, and they'll all be different and have some sort of extra bit of flavor to them that we haven't seen before, and it really shows off the art style as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of times when a series is in development or production, rather, the production studio or the art studio, they don't work on episodes necessarily in order of like the sequence they're to be released. And this episode already is like the art quality is like to me a huge step up from like the previous episodes that we've looked at so far. And I think that either the budget was bigger for it or they actually animated this one probably later in the game than what we actually got after they figured out where they were going. Because it's not just this scene. Like we talked about Zhao meeting Zuko and things like that. I don't know the proper term for this when it's not like cinematography or whatever, when it's not like a set, but like the lighting is really good.
There's more effort put into it.
Yeah, there's just everything kind of pops more, and there's a great deal more atmosphere and just nuance to the art in this particular episode compared to what we've seen so far.
We see a lot of that later
so
on
that
in the
very
episode
flat
as well.
design.
But yeah, those docks are the first sign of it, with the streaming orange light glow. It's beautiful to see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And and it kind of thematic as well because Fire Nation, orange glow. It adds to what comes later, as we'll discuss in a bit.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And they do end up finding they were playing, what was it, Airball? He wanted to teach him how to play.
Yeah.
Because he's Aang and that's what he wants to do first and foremost, is just play and have fun, live life. And then they find the Fire Nation helmet, and then like again you have Katara doing her ice bending or snow bending to hide him and protect him. But then I think Sokka even brings up, he's like, you can't protect him forever. Like eventually he's gonna find something here. Like it's not and then also just further on, just as a bigger metaphor, it's like you can't protect him all the time. Like he's got to face the world, especially sometimes when you have a character who's so sensitive and susceptible to that sort of thing. You kind of want to coddle them, especially with Katara. She's a very motherly type, as we'll see more and more throughout the series.
That's her role.
She's very, that's her role. I mean, especially when we see her contrast it with another character in the second season.
We're all thinking of exactly the same scene right now.
But eventually, like even for parents who are like that, who coddle their children, you eventually have to show them to the world. Eventually, they have to go out into the world. Eventually, you have to knock them out of the the nest and hope that they fly.
Yeah. I like that Sokka doesn't come off as like mean-spirited in that interchange. He's just being realistic.
No. Yeah, he's just like, he's gonna have to know.
And even contributes to helping Aang feel better as well. Even though it puts him in a world of hurt by his own words. His his hand on the shoulder.
He's definitely more of a well-rounded character in general as of this episode already. Again, compared to what we've seen previously in the show.
For Sokka, right?
Yeah.
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 He has layers at this point, but all very believable as well. Everything's come, and the way they've framed it and the way they've pushed it for each part of his development forward. I mean, it's been 3 episodes and he's already had development, which speaks to the quality of the show overall. But the way they're kind of just slowly edging him forward, it's almost like he's had more than the other two by a significant margin here, I would have said. And considering Aang's the main character, that's an interesting way of putting it. moving in that direction either.
I think that's part of what this series does well in general is that Aang doesn't really come off as the main character. Like a lot of shows, like the
Right.
lead is really the only person you care about. Like this one, you have reasons to be invested in all these different little nuggets of stuff that's going on, like from the get-go, which is why it's so appealing, like to so many different people, you know?
Yeah.
Then we move on to the Zuko, Iroh, Zhao scene where they're talking about not only if Zuko actually knows where the Avatar is, but also kind of the climate of the Fire Nation and how they mentioned it's a year away from victory, so we get kind of like a timeline of what's happening. Was there a bit there where they talked about the Earth Kingdom, or were they like just hinting at the Earth Kingdom being hard to conquer?
I think it's implied, yeah. I mean, Zuko
Okay.
has a line where he shows how aware he is of the world around him, beyond the Fire Nation, even more so than the Admiral, apparently. How the rest of the world will never bend to the Fire Nation. His father's a fool.
Yeah, that's probably the only time he speaks ill of his father in the whole series, like until, like later events.
Yeah.
But I mean, because he's still very much trying to get back into his good graces, but like it shows that he's not drinking the Fire Nation Kool-Aid. Like he's seen things beyond like the propaganda of his nation. Whereas it's kind of hard to tell now whether Zhao really thinks they are that close to victory or if he's just arrogant or both. It's sort of, you don't really know this early on.
Yeah. I mean, as
and right now
later,
too,
he has his own plans as well.
Right now, too, we have on the West Coast a lot of Fire Nation colonies, which I don't think we actually know yet. But do we know where they're docked? Are they docked like on the southern tip of the Fire Nation island right now, or is it?
I'm not sure.
Where are they right
I don't
now?
think they
Yeah, I
show
know
us.
about
We
that.
can just kind of assume that it's somewhere around there. They don't really spend much time saying exactly where they are on the map, really ever.
Yeah.
They'll give specific landmarks that'll help you out, but other than that, you just kind of have to take a guess. I would say somewhere around there though.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if they were Fire Nation or they were on one of the colonies, like on the West Coast. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about that. But yeah, they interrogate. Yeah,
because sorry. I was just gonna say the reason why it's a good question is because later in this season they make a big deal of Zuko actually returning to the Fire Nation where he's not allowed.
That's true.
So
that's a good point.
He must not be in the actual Fire Nation proper because Zhao didn't arrest him.
That's a good point.
Right. Yeah. I think. Okay, they have to be on the colony then. They got to be on the colony. Yeah, but where is I don't know. Whatever. I was like, where's that colony? Because they're like so close to the south. But yeah, they interrogate Zuko's men, and they pretty easily
Yeah, we said the other day like how interrogation. Yeah. Did they really, or did they just ask?
So what was the Avatar here? Yeah, totally, man. Kick their butts.
Actually, the way that guards are in this series, I could see one of them just saying that for bragging rights. Like, yeah, we faced the Avatar. Like, what did you guys do? Like, I mean, just trying to show them up while at the same time undermining their captain completely.
Yeah, which at this point hasn't earned their respect anyway. So it makes sense from that point of view. And we've already said how these guys are the kind of the D-list, E-list, if that. He got the bottom of the barrel when he threw that crew together.
Yeah.
Except for Iroh.
I think. Yeah. And I think we go back to the temple, and then he sees the statue of Gyatso, and then he has the flashback about him when he was alive, and he was a kid.
Interesting character.
I forget what the scene was exactly. I think it was just him being like lighting up. I think he was sad about something. What was he sad about? I forget.
I would imagine it's because he knew he was.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, he found out he was the Avatar.
He had all this responsibility that he had to.
All he wants to do is play.
Yeah. Yeah, but you could kind of see even in that short interaction that Gyat wasn't like a stern mentor figure. Like he was, trying to lighten up
the Airbending Council, if that's what they would be called. I think he was like the most lenient on Aang, and the rest of them were like, "Yo, he needs to like go train up and everything."
Yeah. One of them was mean. One of them was just kind of being a realist. I remember that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And all of them get cakes dumped on their faces. As Aang and the Master just fling them over the balcony.
Mm-hmm. You can definitely see where he gets his like jovial, Also, did they ever explain like how? I mean, I know that they don't have necessarily mothers and fathers. They're all not even orphans, but they're monks and they're taken to this place. Do we ever know about Aang's parents or like how he was taken?
It's never even touched
on.
No,
it's implied to me that they aren't that none of them are really raised by their. It's
Their
like a
biological
village raise a
parents.
child. You know what I mean? Like the whole village
Oh, it could
raises
be
you. You're
that a
not really,
village
you
thing.
know, like you're not really, because Zuko makes a comment when he first meets Aang, like that he's doing this for his father, and I
Yeah.
suppose you wouldn't know a father as being a monk. So
Yeah.
like he doesn't know, he doesn't say because you're the Avatar. So I imagine it's the air nomad custom to like the village raises the child, and you're like the child of the nation,
Of
not
everybody.
your parents. Yeah, yeah. But
Ties into that whole
anyway,
spiritual approach because all of them are airbenders, aren't they? So it
yeah.
Yeah.
makes sense for that society.
Yeah, it's never established. We may as well say now because it's not established in an episode. It's established in a behind the scenes factoid, but all air nomads are benders, and it's the only nation like that of the four.
Mm. Except for what was with the acolytes though? Was that a new thing that was brought up in
Yeah,
Legend?
I
That was
think
new, yeah.
That was
that
new.
was
Okay.
something Tenzin did just to
Because
like
there was
have
nobody there.
help. Yeah, yeah.
Got to fill it with someone.
We need some servants.
Right. And then we return to Zhao and Zuko,
I think
right?
it's
I
the
forget what the
sanctuary
next scene was
next.
about.
I think it's the sanctuary next.
Uh,
That's back to the
didn't-
Oh, no,
present.
Sanctuary and the whole
Yeah,
board
first
thing.
they I like that scene because that's the one where they first discover like the statues of all the past avatars, right?
Yeah.
Even
yeah.
though I don't think that I can't remember, but did they realize that that's what they were looking at the time, or did that come about later?
No, Katara pointed out. She goes, "These are all your
Okay.
past lives from
Yeah,
recognizing
that's
it from
after
the
they opened the
cycle."
door mechanism. But
So
yeah.
that's like our first glimpse of Roku then, like in
Yeah.
statue
Yep.
form. Even though he's not like he doesn't come to life and have a character yet, we know what he looks like now. And that was it establishes he was the one right before Aang.
And then they
Yeah.
established the cyclists. We didn't know what the cycle was before. Like there was a distinct cycle between each of the nations.
Yeah. Yep. Which is a cool thing. It correlates to the seasons of the year. If you don't know that, viewers, like water would be winter, and then next in the order would be air for spring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, earth for spring,
Yeah.
and then fire for summer, and then air for autumn. So it's cool. That's how you can remember what it is.
Dope.
If you know, yeah.
Yeah, I like the entire idea of the sequence as well because all about balance. It makes sense for each of the nations to get their own representative avatar in that sequence. Yeah, no, I like it. I love the imagery on the other statues as well. They're not quite they are all unique, but in just small ways. So they didn't have to draw entire statue art for every single one, but they're just different enough where they do look like they are unique going back. And as we'll see in the future, there are specific avatars that get developed more than others, but they at least give a difference between each of the ones they do show on screen, and I like that. Roku's
I
design
forget. It
especially
reminds
is
me of that
gorgeous.
that Chinese burial ground, a burial ground. I forget what it's called.
Tibetan-
Emperor Qin's tomb.
I can't
Chin?
remember.
Oh, like the terracotta warriors.
Yeah,
or what,
terracotta
like,
warriors.
What is
Yeah,
it?
like all his warriors were with him, like in the afterlife, as statuettes, and like it was like one of the biggest discoveries in China. That's what this reminds me of. Like that, I have that vibe from this right now.
Yeah, it's that kind of feel for sure.
Yeah, and then he does even have like a little time where he does start to communicate with Roku a little bit. He has like a little glint in his eye when he's looking at
Katara interrupts him, but yeah, you see the little bit of a glow in the eye.
But this is largely interrupted by the introduction of a new character, Momo, who's a flying lizard lemur. What is he?
Lemur bat.
Flying lemur.
Yeah, but like
or lemur wombat.
Yeah, we haven't talked. Yeah, we haven't talked about it, but like there's like hardly any normal animals in this series. They're all mostly combinations of two or more creatures. So he's a lemur or something. Yeah.
Yeah. But
he's comedy relief. That's all he is.
He's a cute little character. And I like how they, for the most part, he bends into the background as well. He's there, has a presence on screen, but he's not, a gimmick that distracts from what's going on at any point, or at least not very often. So it's a nice little character to throw on top, and it's someone for Aang to have fun with. I like his introduction as well. It's funny, given the whole drama of the scene.
Yeah, it's funny. Were you saying that he was in the pilot, the original pilot, Matt?
Yeah, he was. Like, actually, I'm glad they abandoned this particular idea, but Zuko had his own evil pet bird who would, like, terrorize Momo and chase him around while other action was going on. So he was a part of the series, like, from the get-go. And I also know that, like, Appa like there's a particular drawing done by one of the series creators that with Appa and Aang that was kind of like a big selling point when they were pitching the series. Like whoever was in charge of greenlighting this was like, "Ooh, I like that." So I'm sure that things like that, like helped them get the process moving. So whether or not they intended these to be characters,
all
that,
greenlit on the
stayed
back
all
of
the way.
Momo.
Yeah,
We owe him so much.
So, yeah.
That's how they
Yeah.
greenlit The Force Awakens, BB-8.
Yeah, but alongside this scene, we have the proper confrontation between
Well,
Admiral
Zhao
and Zuko,
yeah.
where Zuko bites off a little bit more than he can chew in that particular scene, or that particular moment. Understandably,
he also
because Zhao, turns up the dickishness significantly. He's like, "Oh, you're a little banished prince. You're nothing. Your father doesn't love you," and all. It's like, Jesus Christ, man! You're an admiral talking to a teenager. Would you curb it down a bit?
Well, technically, he's a commander right now. I just want to point that out. He gets promoted
is he
later.
not the admiral yet? Okay, my bad.
No.
He does say commander, but
he's
because it's technically that's not a rank, it's a role. But yeah, I fair point. Effectively an admiral though at this point, and he's just he's bad mouthing a kid. So, do you not have better things to do with your time? but apparently not, because he accepts the challenge to Agni Kai from Zuko.
And Ira goes like, "Hey, be careful, because you know what? The reason why you got your scar was that Ira who said that, or was that Zhao who said the scar?"
Iroh.
I think Iroh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you
Yeah,
not
Iroh.
remember what happened last time
implied
he
it.
challenged someone to single combat?
Yeah, like, oh yeah, he says like you shouldn't have challenged like
a master.
a
Yeah.
commander.
Called him a master.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that holds up to scrutiny in Zhao's case, but
Maybe
he
a
does refer to him as that.
academic master, less so
Perhaps.
a physical combatant. But I love the delivery of Zuko scene as the camera pans across to the focus on the scar, where he's just like, "I will never forget." That was a powerful moment. For his character, and a defining moment if you think about it, from what that scar represents for him and what we see later on. It was a really good scene.
Next one's the big one.
Yeah, it's Lima Chase in the temple,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the grand lemur chase.
leading to the ultimate.
Aang finds, and that's the reason why they set up all the stuff with the flashbacks with the Gyatso, so that we can kind of understand a little bit more deeply what that man meant to Aang, so that when we do like see, kind of in a way, although it's sad, it's also kind of awesome because he's kind of surrounded by 24 Fire Nation soldiers, and they're all dead with, you know what I mean? Like, so you're like, really nice that inference from the viewer, like, oh snap, this guy's like, he didn't go down without a fight, and he took quite a bit with him
in an enclosed space as well. Let's not forget, airbenders don't do well in tight spaces, and he took all of them out. So he did his job. It's a beautiful piece of art as well. With kind of just lying there, skeleton in the light. It's not horrific because obviously they couldn't be, but at the same time it's got that eerie level of creepiness without it distracting from the emotion. You see focus on Aang's sadness rather than, oh god, that's a gross corpse. It's elegant.
It's pretty dark for considering it's a Nickelodeon show. Like, I'm glad that they were able to get away with this actually, like, and not have to censor it even more than it. Not that it is heavily censored, but I'm surprised that they were able to do that in general. Just with that many dead people on screen, basically.
Yeah.
Well, Nickelodeon used to be. I mean, it used to be at this point when this was released. They used to be like, remember, Are You Afraid of the Dark? That stuff was really.
Is that Nickelodeon? I guess.
Nickelodeon, but it was kind of older. It was like early '90s, and this is like more mid 2000s, which is a different kind of Nickelodeon, which is like SpongeBob and Rocket Power.
Right. Exactly. I'm thinking like this, like they would have some like Chalk Zone coming up next after this.
Right. I remember
yeah. But it's just in a completely different league.
Oh yeah. This is it's not even.
But this
the same
sequence activates finally.
playfield.
Well, not finally. He had his avatar state before when he was dying. But this is like the kind of avatar state that we've come to know Aang having an issue with going forward. Is that he doesn't really have control of it. It's like when he's in emotional turmoil, he just kind of goes ham with it. And this is our first impression of it, is that he has a lack of control. And because he's an avatar, unlike pretty much all the other avatars before him who had proper training and had like all this time to develop the avatar state, he doesn't have that benefit. He's just got to go into it kind of almost self-taught. I mean, he does have friends and help, but in terms of the avatar state itself, he's pretty much self-taught. And we can see how vulnerable he is in these kinds of situations.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to put a cap on it to start with. So if he triggers it, that's it. He needs someone else to pull him out. Or at least at this point.
It's very Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it's a powerful scene. I like how it's not just explosion of anger or rage. It's a quiet kind of like what's going on. Like he's lost, and then he sort of amps up the power. It's kind of release of powerful emotion rather than just outright rage, which we often get later on in the series, which is has its place as well. But
yeah, I would say like it's very rare that he actually wields the avatar state in any in any way. Like in this case, it's more like and I would say it's not. I mean, this might be debatable, but I don't think of it as like rage being like his trigger. For me, it's more despair. Like when he goes into it, he just is like completely. There's a desperation like to what he's about, and like a sadness or an inability to change anything in the moment right now. Sort of like an Anakin Skywalker sort of theme,
but done well.
Yeah.
And you're definitely right. When it's Aang in the driver's seat, which is again rare for the Avatar state, his trigger is definitely the whole desperation and the needs of the moment being that critical. It's more
because he doesn't
sternness comes from the other avatars leading him.
Yeah, there's no one to lash out here except just he's been confronted by like the reality of the situation, not like an external force like right now, like that he has to overcome in a fight or something. And he's not really exercising his power or his bending. He's just not able to deal. And I think it makes sense because on some level the avatar state is a defensive mechanism, like designed to bail you out of trouble. And like in his case, because he's a kid and untrained and everything, a lot of that is like mental defense or mental sort of I don't know how to phrase that more elegantly than I already did. So there you go.
Yeah, mental defense is good. And then we have kind of like a lighting of the beacon, sort of, where like technically the whole world kind of knows the Avatar is back because you have all these
it must have been a more powerful state than before because it triggers the beacon, doesn't it? Again, beautiful shot.
It's cool that they actually explain a little bit of like they don't explain for every nation or anything, but they establish who like the fire sages are at least later on in the show.
Yeah, and we can assume that they're shown like the water sages and such because they've got the little crystal on top of the hut, which we don't see ever again pretty much, but it it's there, and it means that it gets across how important the Avatar is on a global scale and how people know about him moving forward, rather than just this one kid that's going around on a flying bison that no one ever sees.
It also sort of forces it sort of heightens Zuko's threshold for what he has to deal with because he's not the only one looking now. Like a lot of people now know that
the whole world
raises the stakes, which leads us nicely into his whole situation, because running parallel to this awakening of Aang's spiritual power is Zuko and his confrontation with not the admiral, sorry, the commander Zhao in the Agni Kai, which is just at this point in the series, obviously I'd seen a few episodes before this one because I watched it out of order initially, but this was one of the episodes where I kind of saw, okay, this is something really cool. Like you said earlier that the animation had been stepped up for this episode in comparison to the previous, and it definitely shows in the Agni Kai.
Even just like the first stage of it when he first like summons his fire, like the way that sort of slow-mo shot where like the way that the flames are like rendered. I don't know how they did that, but it looks really cool. And again, I know I mentioned this last episode of our podcast, but this was the first episode of the show I watched. So this was like my
that's a good place to go.
Yeah, like my metric for like what the series is all about and like what it can do. And so anytime like it deviated or fell from that in the first season, I was like, oh, that's okay. Like, so they're still finding themselves in the show. But like later on, the quality is like consistently this good. And it's I love the way that they animated this entire episode, but this scene most especially, of course.
It was phenomenal.
I forgot to mention this when we talked about the Scar thing, but they do a really good job of, like we were saying before, doing the layers of character development. Because first we understand what Zuko wants, but then now we're starting to get in this episode why he does what he does, and then seeing the outcomes of that, especially when he's like pushed to the limits, like with the Agni Kai challenge. And I also like what Iroh was saying, like on the sidelines about breaking the rules and making sure that he's adhering to fundamentals, because I think that's extremely important just in fighting in general, or in just life in general, like stick to your fundamentals, especially with what we'll see later in the season with Zhao, who doesn't really have a good route, or maybe not even such a good route, but just doesn't have like He's a little
he
overzealous.
yeah
Oh
he
yeah,
he he completely missed the philosophical point of firebending according to
Right,
his instructor, which we'll get into
right.
later. But
Which
like you were saying, oh, go ahead, finish your
was
point real
it,
quick.
and also because I'm looking at a screenshot of him right here where you can see his neck muscles just like popping out. Kind of what Iroh was saying in those early episodes about it's not from your muscles, but
Mhm.
obviously for Zhao, no, it's all about my muscles, and you can just see that just from just how he's
Yeah,
built out. Like that's how he uses fire bending. It's like, oh, I have bigger muscles, I'm going to have a more powerful
yeah,
against you.
yeah,
When if that's not really where the true power comes from.
that
yeah.
and his
He's
movements as well. You know, the arm like straining and pushing away and blocking every
Hmm.
strike. You know, it's all about the firm kind of entrenched movement with him, almost like an earthbender in his movements.
Yeah,
he's
very much
yeah
so.
he's yeah he's directly called out for this later on in the show, like by a firebending instructor, basically later on. But what I was going to say when I interrupted you a few minutes ago was that I like how you mentioned Iroh mentioning fundamentals, because that to me is central to Iroh as a character. Whereas you can go both ways in it. Like he's a very simple person, like in terms of like what makes him happy and like how he operates, and he's going to
Yeah.
like expend the least amount of effort possible. But also his bending style, he's easily one of the greatest firebenders that we'll ever see, and he never does anything elaborate whatsoever. Like
Mm.
his whole style is very no nonsense, fundamental to the point, just the most efficient means possible, and that really fits in with what he's trying to impart to Zuko, who also needs to learn the same lesson that Zhao does because he's a hot-headed teenager.
Mm. But he has. We see as we said about the layers thing. This is one of the first times where he does take on what Ira is saying and puts it to good use as he defeats Zhao with not firebending but basic movements. You know, well, I say
Yeah.
basic or intricate moveset, but in a sort of basic application. You know, no grandiose blast of flame, just a simple twist and pull and throws. And as Ira shouts in, take out his root. He takes Zhao down from the feet, and then he's straight over him and getting ready for the final shot, which he doesn't take because we see now, of course, that Zuko isn't that kind of character.
Yeah, it's actually very funny because that's kind of in a way because we've seen all these other like there's this sequence in writing called kill the cat and save the cat. For your villains, you want them to always kill the cat, and then for your hero, you want them to save the cat. We've already had Zuko kind of killing the cat with like coming to like the Southern Water Tribe, but this is the first moment that we have him kind of doing a save the cat moment where it's like, oh, he's not like a totally bad guy because he spared Zhao from like scarring like he's gone through in his life. And we also beyond that also get to see Zhao's temper a little bit too,
Mm.
because like he was defeated and like that where's the honor and like trying to come back at Zuko the way he does, which we'll see further on. Again, like we mentioned, like people bring this up later on, and then when he does some other stuff, it's one of his detriments.
Yeah, and it's again because all about consistency with his characters. You know, Zhao isn't a major character. He's significant for sure, and definitely in this series, obviously. But well, only in this
Yeah, I
series, I
think for the
guess.
first, but
But it's the fact that he's almost going through his same level of growth in the opposite direction. You know, he's encountering Zuko. He's been humiliated by Zuko now, a teenager. You know, that's a heavy blow to his honor. And his character that we see in the future, that keeps, that stays with him. Same way it
Yeah,
does with Zuko. So moving along, but these are two characters where we don't, in any other show, perhaps neither of them will get any development, and here we have them very gradually moving along in different ways, in opposite ways even, as a side plot to the main characters. It's something we don't see very often in fiction in general. Certainly on
yeah.
a cartoon.
I think a lot of villains in particular, like I guess human heroes in different works of fiction can do this too, but it's like a common thing among antagonists, I would say, is that there's a confuse they confuse honor with their ego.
Hmm.
And in this case, like Zhao's not really like trying, he's just trying to save face out of he doesn't have like noble reasons for doing that. Like his honor isn't like he sacrifices his honor trying to reclaim it, as Iroh calls him out for doing, like right now or like right after. And the whole interaction establishes a lot about who Iroh and Zuko are and who Zhao is at their core. Like but they're hints. They're not like outright, expressions of, well, this is my personal history and everything I've done. But you can see in through their actions who they really are, like within the span of about 30 seconds, which is really good storytelling.
Yeah, and this is the
yeah, and
third
that's the best way
episode.
to.
This isn't like a climax of the character's peak. This is the first bump on, not even a bump, but first kind of spike in Zuko's character growth, and it then returns to a consistent norm before bringing it in for the next episode that he comes into for the foreground with. it's really interesting that they've done it so early on and had it to such a great extent.
Yeah, that's the best way to like kind of challenge and bring out core values is when you have conflicts like that. Like that all comes out within the Agni Kai fight, and then with Aang, his whole thing comes out with finding Gyatso dead. Uh, the best way, just in terms of any kind of storytelling, it is to present conflict that will naturally show what your character really is, what will bring back those layers bit by bit, which is really, they do that really well, I think, in the show.
Yeah, people, especially in big budget films, they tend to think, okay, well, this scene will be for character development, this scene will be plot and action. They very rarely kind of successfully marry the two. Yeah, it's something that needs to be done because it makes it so. Until you kind of start thinking about it, a lot of the times you don't notice it so much. Like it does just kind of fly by, and that's really clever. Sometimes you just see it and just don't think about it. But when you do stop, you can appreciate how. I mean, like we said with the Aang versus Zuko fight from the second episode, that was just him getting his staff and running out the room. But there was a lot going on in that fight. Some you don't appreciate immediately because you don't know the characters yet. But there's a lot of it that you can look back on and go, wow, that was really well done. And it's the same with the Agni Kai. But instead of hero and protagonist, it's protagonist and antagonist, or hero and villain, it's protagonist and antagonist in this sense.
Yeah. Wait, to speak to what you were just sort of trying to find the right word for there, like it sort of opens the door to whether or not like Zuko's an antagonist or anti-hero. You know what I mean? Like and it sort of opens up the door to that question in your mind really early on in the series, which is necessary because there's always like this through line of an A plot and a B plot, and it keeps you invested in that B plot with Zuko.
Tying them to the characters and not making them just fluff or filler. It's really well done, and we can only appreciate it because we don't get it very often. it's a rare thing to see. But
I think we come to the end of the episode, which is really like Sokka and Katara really helping Aang come to terms with all of this, and he really needs that too. Like it's good that he has friends to be with him to help him get out of that situation.
Yeah, it kind of wraps it up with him being pulled out of the Avatar state, pulled out from his sense of loss, and given that that feeling of family again. Because Katara and Sokka, both of them, not just Katara, even though Katara is obviously the fulcrum of the moment. They say we're your family now, and that resonates with Aang. Because that's really what he's lost. He's lost his family. He's a nomad, but he always had that point of home to come back to, and now he doesn't.
Yeah. They establish it without saying it. Like even though he didn't have parents in the traditional sense, he had very much had a family, and it's gone now. And so it needs to be replaced with something else. Which, especially because he's a kid, I mean, you can't expect somebody like that to really pick up the pieces on their own. So it's all to the good that he has these two along with him.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention too that when they approach the air temple, he says, "This is earlier in the episode where he says, like, well, no one can unless you have an appa, like you can't really get to an air temple, because back when he was alive, there weren't really there wasn't these technological advances that the Fire Nation had with their airships and everything. Which actually, I don't think we don't see airships yet, right?
No, we don't. That's way later.
But that's actually a pretty good setup that they did right there because they're like, because that's like they just slip it and then you don't really think about it and then you're like, wait, how did the Fire Nation get there?
The first time it's explained, I think, is in the next temple episode or air temple episode. It's where with the stuff that we'll come to later. I think it's implied that that's what they did originally with the first kind of purging.
Yeah, I think that I don't think it's even implied. I think that the characters assume that's what must have happened based on what they discover about Fire Nation technological capabilities in the Northern Air Temple. I think it is.
Yeah, that is the northern one. That one, yeah, because the Western's later on. But yeah, no, we'll see that to come, obviously. And I like that. Again, it raises questions. that scene wasn't really making you ask the question of how do they do it, but it's a question that then lingers nevertheless. And when you think about it, then it's there and they answer it. It's another one of those small details which the show is so good at. But yeah, that wraps up this. Oh, the last thing you see actually before it closes, before we close it, is the lingering shot of the temple fading into the clouds with Aang on the back of Appa, kind of longingly looking back at it. The last glimpse of home that it will get for a very long time. I really liked that. That was the first time where the ending music kind of stood out to me. I mean, it was obviously brilliant before, and that's something we haven't really mentioned yet. But the music in this show is just phenomenal. It's
very quiet, very muted.
Yeah, but this particular scene, this closing scene, is like the do 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 do. That just was perfect for me. It spoke to the somber moment, spoke to Aang's feelings.
Are they called xylophones? Is that what that instrument is?
I think it is, or an equivalent. rough equivalent anyway. But it's a beautiful sound, and it's very unique to the show as well. You could hear that, and you immediately think Avatar with most of the music in this show. It's iconic.
Yeah.
And also yeah.
I was going to say this particular episode, they told a lot of the story really well with music. Like the Avatar State has a particular cue that plays whenever that happens. The Agni Kai duel was very heavily presented using music and like no dialogue whatsoever. You're saying the sort of, not the credits music, but the finale, whatever, the end of the episode music, all that, like the music is universally good in this series. Like
in particular, we're gonna get into it in the next episode, but I really like the musical cues in the next episode.
Yeah, it's really good. Not just the heavy gravitas and massive sweeping orchestra stuff that a lot of fantasy shows and films do, but like the small moments that just kind of cut between, the silly moments even, just they have a nice little beat to them and unique flavour they do with like little chimes and such. It's really good to see. But we'll get more into that in the future because there's obviously better examples in this one. But this is the first big one for me. But yeah, that closes that episode, the episode 4.
Yeah, it was good. It was definitely a great episode.
Air Temple.
Yeah, very proud to have it as my first episode that I watched.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one. Definitely one of my favorites from the first series as well. It stands out.
Yeah, I would say that.
Even with all 3 of them put together, of the seasons.
I would agree with that. Like if you were to make a compilation of highlights of each season, like this would be like in like my top 5 episodes of season 1, for example.
Definitely, yeah. So yeah, that closes up for this one. We'll see you guys next week for episode 4, the Kyoshi Warriors. I'm Roti 4, and I still don't have an outro.
Great Jedi 91. See you guys later.
Antoine Vandelay, peace, love, and remember, be water, my friends.
Bye-bye.